So much here, the IMF is in South Africa, but why would it actually be disastrous for us to get a loan from the institution?
Well, Christine Lagarde visiting South Africa and the rest of Africa and actually, just doing courtesy calls with some of the presidents as well. But in terms of the IMF, if South Africa does go cap in hand to the IMF, there are certain conditions that are attached to the loans that they give out to any particular country. I mean, if you have Greece in mind, they're still paying back a loan of about 10 billion euros, and something they've been struggling with for quite a while and have to pay until 2024. So what the IMF does and then comes in and has a consultation with the country every time and actually audits the country, which means they basically run the fiscus of that particular country to make sure that you can pay back some of the money that is lent to you. In actual fact, Tito Mboweni earlier this year, the finance minister in Parliament, saying that if South Africa does not get itself out of the current debt that it's got now, it could end up in a debt trap, which means it goes to the likes of the IMF, which could change policy to fit the way they want things run in a country, which is something we do not want. Of course, we're still trying to have an economy that's more inclusive and also, that's transforming and giving, the previously disadvantaged more focus. So if the IMF comes in and doesn't like that particular policy, it could be shifted to something else. So that's what, we're expecting to hear tomorrow in terms of the press conference coming out with the President and Christine Lagarde. So there are talks that are happening, but one analyst we spoke to today says South Africa has to be more careful about the kind of deals that it gets into with the IMF.
We already got indications in July and then last month of what the IMF wants to see done. And it's usually the so-called Washington consensus. And I suspect she'll be amping up that message, which is privatize, raise interest rates, make the budget deficit as low as possible. We may be, again, in the range of 4%. They want it down below 3%. Give the international investors confidence, try to get the investment grade rating back. So it's fairly predictable. But what's going on behind the scenes, what deals, if there's another loan, if there's conditions like raise Eskom tariffs to pay for this huge debt they're incurring now, that would be where I hope the society wakes up and says, like the Nigerians, we won't let this happen.
And then the World Economic Forum putting the spotlight on the widening gap between women and their male counterparts.
Definitely, they came back with very shocking numbers in the Global Gender Gap Index that came out today, and something they'll be looking at this particular week. And they're saying it could take up to 108 years, for women to close the gap with their male counterparts, which just shows you how, countries are not taking this seriously in terms of equity between both parties and equality between the both parties as well. I mean, we're still happy with the fact that men still lead, a lion's share of society, whether be it in politics or work or even in business and corporate, which has the most staggering numbers. I mean, only 34% of women in the globe are in CEO positions and in chairmanship positions, and we've seen this in particular with the JSE. We've seen a regression in terms of women leading in business as well. But there are some good points to take away. Rwanda, an economy in Africa that's actually leading in some fronts, and it's actually 6th in the world out of 149 countries. They're giving more economic opportunities to their women, giving more opportunities in terms of the workplace for women in that country. Where South Africa does lead is in terms of health for women in hospitals and in terms of the growth of women in health. But anything else in terms of science, technology, future skills, South Africa is also lagging behind. And most importantly, the pay gap between them and men in South Africa, between women and men in South Africa, is actually widening as well, something that they're failing to get in check. So we spoke to a WEF official who just explained how the African region is doing in terms of closing down the gap between men and women.
If we look at the regional prospects, so the main reason why the Sub-Saharan Africa region takes a step back this year is mainly driven by the economic conditions. So there are a bit less women participating in the labor force and also a little bit less progress with respect to senior position and income. Specifically on South Africa, although the performance of South Africa doesn't change compared to last year, there are still a number of factors on which South Africa can improve. For example, the amount of women who are in the board of directors or senior position is still quite low. There is quite an improvement to be done there. And also in terms of a political empowerment, there is, even if South Africa is quite advanced there could be improvement.
Those numbers are shocking in 2018 going into 2019.
Quite shocking numbers, and it just shows you how in terms of regulation and policy, a lot of the countries are building glass ceilings just so women don't progress in life.
All right. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it.